Let's talk about file systems and formatting. The file system is what controls all the files on your computer, and it makes everything work together with the operating system. Windows can work with several different types of file systems. For example, NTFS, which is the most common. NTFS allows for very large partition sizes, lots and lots of file storage, and also security in the form of NTFS level permissions, which we'll talk about later in the course. But there are other file systems as well, such as FAT32, which is the predecessor to NTFS. FAT32 cannot have nearly as large of a partition or as many files, but you may see it used in some instances, for example, with a USB flash drive. Some flash drives are set to FAT32 as a native format, depending on what you're writing to the flash drive. But a better solution for flash drives is the exFAT file system. And you'll see that quite often with today's larger flash drives. Microsoft developed this to work specifically with USB flash drives. We also have CDFS, which is the compact disc file system. Your optical drives must comply with this file system in order for Windows to work with them and read the data on those optical disks. Then we move outside of Windows. We have NFS, which is the network file system, very common in Unix and Linux environments. However, Windows can interoperate with NFS. And the idea with the network file system is that you can access files on remote systems. Then we have the most commonly used file system in Linux, which is Extended 3 and Extended 4. And we'll be talking about that more as we get into the Linux portion of the course. So you want to know these different file systems and their basic usage. You also want to know about formatting. Formatting is what you do to a partition or volume to make it usable by the operating system. If it's not formatted, you can't use it. And you could do a quick format or a full format. Full format deletes everything off of the partition or volume. It takes that volume and makes it ready for you to use, but everything has been cleared off. A quick format makes it available for you to use and it frees up all the space, but a lot of the remnants of data are still there. So the recommendation is this: if you have a brand new drive and you want to set it up as one big C drive or C volume, then a quick format's fine because there was no data on that drive. But if you're working with a drive or a volume that previously had data, then you should go with the full format so that it really deletes all that data. And if you're in a secure environment, you may need to go further and you may need to do additional overwriting. And we'll talk about that later in the course as well. Now let's show a little bit about file systems and formatting. I have a USB flash drive connected to this laptop right now. Let's take a look at the file system it's using, and we'll open up File Explorer and we'll right-click on that drive and go to Properties. And that's going to tell us that it's running the FAT32 file system. Now you can also format this drive if you want to clear it out by right-clicking it and selecting Format. And that brings up the format window here. And you can see the capacity of the drive. You can see the file system that's used and the volume label. And we can select other file systems, for example, NTFS, which will work, and exFAT, which is really meant for USB flash drives. You can also select the quick format. If you do a quick format, it'll do a very fast format, but it'll leave some of the data there. If you deselect that, it'll do a full format and it'll take longer. Now you can also access this type of information about file systems and formatting from the Disk Management Console window. And we can open that by going to our run prompt and typing diskmgmt.msc. Press enter, and that brings up the disk management window. And you see all your disks here. And we'll talk about this console window more as we go through the course. But you see here we have disk 0. That's the main hard drive on this laptop. and it's broken up into different partitions. We have our C drive, where the operating system exists, and then we have recovery partitions in case Windows 8 fails, and the extensible firmware interface partition, which works in conjunction with your BIOS or UEFI. Here we have the removable disk. This is the USB flash drive, and it's called recovery because I actually made it into a recovery flash drive within Windows 8, and we'll show how to do that in the future as well later in the course. But you can see that it's FAT32, and we can also format it from here by right-clicking and selecting Format, which you can do for any of these guys. So you have a color-coded chart of all your partitions, of all your disks here, and you also have the layout of those volumes here. And you can see we have our C drive, which is NTFS. You can see the size, you can see the percentage free, and we have our USB flash drive, which is FAT32, and the size of that, and the percentage free. So lots of information at your fingertips in the disk management utility. So we showed that you can view the drive or the volume within the File Explorer window, which, by the way, in older versions of Windows, like Windows 7 and Vista, is called Windows Explorer. We also showed that you can view these things in disk management, and you can work with these types of tools in the command prompt as well. Just as a little primer, if we go to the command prompt now, you can run the format command with the /?, find out more about it. And you can see here that we can do all kinds of things with the format command, and we'll cover this later in the course also. And for more information about things you can do with partitions, you can use the diskpart utility. And we'll say yes for that. And that brings up the diskpart utility here. And from here, if we press the question mark, you'll see that we have lots and lots of options. For example, the ability to add volumes, to convert volumes, to delete volumes, to work with RAID, to recover information. You can do things like format as well from here. So lots of options in diskpart, which is essentially the command prompt version of the disk management window. So you want to know all these different tools that you can use. But for now, remember, your file system is what you choose to make all your files work with the operating system. And NTFS is the most common for a hard drive running Windows. FAT32 might be seen on a USB flash drive, or perhaps a different type of memory, for example, an SD card or a compact flash card. And you might also see exFAT for USB flash drives as well. So that's a little bit about file systems and formatting, and that's it for this sublesson.